Hi, I'm Beth Comstock. For my latest edition of Changemaker Book Club, it's kind of weird because we're going to talk about my book. And I'm so delighted to have Bob Safian here. Bob is the former editor of Fast Company, a changemaker himself, and charting off in a whole new territory of change. So we're going to have a lot to talk about, so thank you. As usual, we're here at WeWork. So there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity going on around us.
Yes,
so
indeed.
It's kind of weird because I've been doing this book club for about 18 months. I like to bring in different people who are talking about change. My book's about change, and so rather than interview myself, I just thought it'd be great to have you here to talk about my book, but also let's just talk about change and what's going on in the world. So thanks. I'm going to let you have the first question.
Sure. Well, I have to say, I started reading your book and I just fell into it. It took me over. I think you really did
Were you skeptical in the beginning?
Well, I'm always skeptical. That's the way journalists are. But you did a terrific job of sort of weaving your personal story with some lessons that were really revealing. And there's so many things that you reveal about yourself, but also about the challenges of success and failure and what those words even mean in a modern context that's moving as quickly.
Yeah, well, thanks for reading it so thoughtfully. I really wanted to, I felt if it was about transformation and change at work, I had to share my personal story of change. It's a different kind of business book. I think people will find that in it. It's got some practical advice, I hope, but it's also a story.
You know, there are a few things I wanted to ask you about it, a few specific things. One of them is you often brought in outsiders to your company to try to be agitators, be sparks for change.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how important it is, like the specific agitator you bring in, or that like you just got to have somebody.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think mostly you just got to have somebody from the outside who can provoke you, and somebody who's not trying to drum up all the business of the future, and they're really willing. They want to see change happen. They have a point of view, and they're willing to just challenge the organization. Those were the best sparks to me. Clearly, you need some expertise. I remember early on, we used to work with someone like Sunny Bates, who you know, who's just a great networker, and she'd help us pull together groups. We once did a conversation with people, early pioneers in blockchain and Bitcoin. And you know, you needed expertise in blockchain to have that discussion, right? And that ended up being a very provocative conversation because we had different points of view. It challenged people, and it was weird. And so everybody in the room in that time has this, like, you can see the body language. The G people were like, you know, curled inside themselves. This is so weird. Why do I care about this? And so you need people that make them feel a bit uncomfortable, but also push a point of view. And so I think you do need some kind of expertise.
I mean, it's interesting, or sometimes as an insider, you can be talking about something and they don't hear it the same way as if they hear it from someone else.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think that would be one of the lessons is you do need the insiders because they can translate it. They understand the culture, they know the language, but people don't listen to us inside because they have to work with us. What do you know, right? I mean...
Yeah, so there was something in your book that I didn't know. I didn't know that you had twice turned down job offers from Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Now, is this something that you look back on and you look at it with regret, or are you someone who doesn't regret? You're imagining forward so much that you're not looking back.
Yeah, well, no, I did regret it at points. I turned down the opportunity to go to Apple twice because they just weren't the right roles for me. It wasn't the right situation for my family, but ultimately it just didn't feel like it was the right role for me.
Yeah, so you sort of have to trust your instinct.
You have to trust your instinct, but boy, did I question that. When I talked to Steve Jobs, especially the second time, both of them were in a period of time. I was at NBC. It was a frustrating time. It was digital change at NBC. I was the change person, and it was a tough time. I mean, it got very personal. It was my worst job ever. Let me just put it that way. So it was very tempting, and he was not yet the Steve Jobs.
Right.
They were on their way up. I remember in one of the phone conversations, he said, you know, big stuff's going to happen here. And I remember sitting down at the dinner table with my husband, and we were going through the offer and looking at things like stock options and going like, how good can this be, really?
Right, well, you can't really count that as being worth anything.
Exactly. There were those times when you're like, okay, but, and I think he seemed like the kind of person that would challenge you to be better. And so I felt like I missed that opportunity to be challenged in that way. And so I regretted that. Sometimes I think maybe I feared taking that assignment. Was I not confident enough? I had to deal with that in myself a little bit also. So, but in the end, I think I just said, but my gut I made the right gut call for me.
I mean, you've worked for a lot of tough bosses. I mean,
Yeah.
Jack Welch's tough boss, Ted Turner
Yeah.
you worked for, Jeff Zucker, right?
Yeah.
Is working for tough bosses a good thing?
Yes
I mean, it's
and-
hard.
Yeah. Yes and no. I think you need demanding people, but you also need people who know your strengths and can encourage you and be champions for. I'm a different kind of person, and so
Yeah.
I feel like I needed people who were champions for difference, not just everybody being exactly the same. But yeah, I think there's something good about working for demanding people. They push you farther than you think you're going to go yourself.
You describe yourself as an introvert.
Yeah.
And yes, you don't come across as being particularly introverted. Is that like a constant fight for you, or have you sort of trained yourself to operate externally, even though it's uncomfortable for you?
Yeah, well, a little of both. I am still very much an introvert, and to me, I learned from Susan Cain's book about quiet. You know, that it's the way you manage your energy, and so introverts. You know, you need to pull energy in, and so you just expend it all at the end of the day, and you're just like, I need to curl up. I still feel that regularly. I'm less shy and reserved than I used to be, and I just had to push myself to do that. That's part of what I try to share in the book, documenting what I did, little steps forward, to go to a networking event rather than stand in the corner, you know, hoping no one talks to me, to actually go up and say, hey, I probably wouldn't have introduced myself to you. I would have been too embarrassed. You were a high-powered editor, but I'd say, finally get my nerve. Hi, Bob. I'm Beth. And maybe make a little small talk and leave. So I just gave myself challenges. Next time I'd meet 2 people, next time 3. But I got to the point that I realized introversion was holding me back because it meant I was too quiet in meetings. I wasn't putting ideas out there. I'd show up and people didn't know I was there. In fact, I share a story of working as a PR person at Turner and for Ted Turner, and he didn't know my name. For a year he didn't know my name. I never gave him a reason to know my name. And that got to the point where it was like, I feel like I can't move forward, so I had to fix that.
Well, one of the things I love about your book and the way you tell it with your personal story is the constant growth and challenges that you had to get over, which is endemic to the time period we're in right now. I think I was thinking about when we first wrote about you at Fast Company, and I actually think that you were in the first issue that I ever did at Fast Company. Mark Zuckerberg was on the cover. He was 19, and you were on the back page.
Oh, I remember. I was at NBC.
You were at NBC.
Yeah.
I remember.
Jennifer Reingold did the piece.
That's right. But I did a bigger story that included you about this idea of Generation Flux, this idea of sort of how you manage in a time of constant change and how you think about yourself and your tasks differently in doing that. And I feel like your book really encapsulates that, because we are in a completely different era than most of us were trained for.
Yeah, I think that's really the issue. That's why there were a couple of reasons I felt compelled to write it, but I saw this in the company I work for, the customers we had. We all think change is very linear.
Yeah.
We think we control change. We think, well, we'll do it when we're ready. We'll take care of this first, then we'll do the next thing, but it doesn't work that way. If it ever did, the illusions are gone, and so it's about adaptation. It's about being able to live between the core of established business and the what's new and next. And it is about being Gen Flux. I mean, what was that definition when you put that addition together? What was that?
I mean, for me, it's about this idea of adaptability, right? And sort of accepting, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is not something that is naturally human, or certainly not natural in the way that we're raised and our culture works. And I identified that there were some people like you who I think represent what are the characteristics that will be most important in the world we're moving into. I deeply believe that we are in the early stages of the changes that technology are making culturally and globally. And as much as we have had to adapt ourselves to so far, it's only the beginning. And this is what is so important for businesses and for all of us culturally to understand.
And to think at that, what year was that you started Gen Flux?
That was probably 2012, maybe?
Yeah, I mean,
13?
To think that it was remarkable enough that you gave a cover to it, that you said, I'm going to declare this is a new kind of leader we need who's adaptable. I mean, one, it was prescient, but two, like amazing that we have to remind people we have to be about adaptation.
Yes, and that it's not, you can't do everything in a command and control way.
Yeah.
I mean, as you point out so nicely, like the way Jack Welch ran GE was very effective for the time that he was running it.
Yeah.
But that tactic today would probably not yield the same kinds of results.
No, I mean, GE went on to become a very global, distributed. Jeff Immelt was very much a champion for people who were different, globally, intellectually, and he pushed us to go forward in new spaces, kind of protected us. I mean, I share a story in the book about Ecomagination when we launched the clean tech revolution, and people were very nervous we were going to get ahead of our customers, and we lost a few customers, and Jeff kind of protected the team from knowing that because he didn't want to thwart our nerve as we were pushing change. I think those are the kind of leaders we need to keep reminding ourselves we need in companies.
I love the story about Ecomagination too, because it captures this idea of mission and purpose in business and what's so important. And with that, GE pivoted from having a reputation of being a polluter, to being a champion of the environment. And that is not something the marketplace or data necessarily tells you. You have to decide that that's what you want to be.
Yeah, and that you can be that. I mean, it was scary because people weren't confident that we could be that. So part of declaring an aspiration to the world is you're not there yet, right? And so that's also part of building a brand, building a story. I mean, to me, story is everything in business. I mean, I don't know why we think it's what we do at the end, but it was about a story for the future. We were always in technology and energy generation. Why can't we be part of the next generation? And we're not there yet, but come with us and help us build it. So part of your story is the aspiration of what you're trying to do in the future.
So I know you're on the Nike board, and Nike has gotten a lot of attention for its embrace of Colin Kaepernick. Do you think brands have to take big risks to periodically redefine or reanimate their brands and their mission?
I do. I think brands need to stay relevant. They need to know, first of all, what's important to their consumers. I mean, Nike's always been really good. I love the surgical nature of just the way they know their customer, their consumer. It's an athlete. We're going to help our athlete perform better. And I always like that little athlete with an asterisk. If you have a body, you're an athlete.
Yes, it's brilliant.
It's so brilliant.
Yes.
But they're really focused, and they know they're athletes, and they know they've been about athletes and having a voice and a story and leading and standing up for their voice. And so I think they know that's important to their consumers. It is not a risk-free world. And I think if there's anything someone takes from reading my book, it's that it's about imagining the future. And to me, it's about risk is acting on imagination. And we somehow have gotten to the place in business where we think risk-free is possible. Someone said to me, my job is risk mitigation. What advice do you have for me? And I was like, good luck, because you're going to fail. You're just going to fail. There is no such thing as risk avoidance. Maybe you can mitigate it a little bit, but we think that we can avoid risk. And really, it's about what's your mission, what's your strategy, and then making sure you're taking the right level of risk to learn and move to the next step.
We do put these illusions on ourselves sometimes about what we can control.
I worry a bit. I think you see the tension in there with short-term, long-term. I think it's just become the way business works, the way Wall Street expects regular earnings, regular performance, and it's not realistic. There are certain parts of the business I think you can expect that on. But I think there's always got to be the new and the next, and they have different measurements. You're just trying to figure out, is my idea going to work? Can I get a customer? Can I get from one customer to many? It requires different kind of people to do that, and I worry that we're just too narrowly focused on the perfection piece and not enough about what it takes to make the future. And I'm actually worried for the future of our companies because of that.
Well, and not everything lasts forever, for jobs or for companies, right? You see the transitions that GE went through from Jack's GE to Jeff's GE to the GE that now John is putting together, and it's they're very different entities.
And that's what you have to accept, that you did your best during the time that you're there, and then somebody else is going to figure out a different way forward. we both know John Maida.
Yes.
I always love John's little sayings, but he has this great line of, I once asked him, how do you deal with all the things that you're confronting? He said, sometimes I think maybe our job is just to lay one brick in the foundation of a building, and everybody has, it stabilizes it, but you're not the only person who did that, and that's the way it is with change, right? It's just constantly, you do your best, and then it's time for other people to take over and keep moving forward.
And that's the way of the world, right?
Yeah.
We are building on each other's progress. We hope it's
Yeah,
progress.
yeah.
We believe, as you always say, like there's proof and then there's faith, right? We believe that it's progress, and if we believe it's progress, maybe we can build more out.
So one of the things I love is just key questions to help you sort of creatively problem solve. And you said, like, what problem are you trying to solve? That's one of my favorite questions. How do we make this simple? Like,
yeah.
I mentioned simplicity. I love that as a question. If this were simple, if this were easy, what would we do? Because we tend to overcomplicate things.
And it is hard to boil things down to
is.
their absolute essence.
And as an editor, how do you do that?
You just keep leaning on it.
Yeah. So you're just an iterative. You just
iterate over and over again. There's a designer's motif, right? John Maida may have talked to you about this, but you think of designing or creating a product or an idea as a spiral, and you sort of get closer and closer and closer into the middle. If once you get to the bottom, then you zoom in on it, and that's the big circle, and you just keep trying to get closer and tighter.
Yeah.
And that you never get to the end. I mean, I think that is part of the subtext of a lot of things in your book too, that this is not a world that comes to natural closure.
Yeah.
It's about the motion and the movement.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to do with the book, was to show partly the struggle, right? You're never done. The innovators, the change, whatever change maker means to people, to me it means you're kind of going head first into what's new and next,
Yes.
but you're never done. And it's a struggle. People don't understand what you're saying. You don't understand what you're saying. It's murky. You don't know what that is. It's filled with ambiguity. You get it wrong.
Yes.
You fail. I easily could have called this fail forward because I tried to share the mistakes. But yet, for some people, we just have to do that. Like, we just have to keep pushing. And I think that's what I had to come to sense of in writing the book, was just an understanding of myself that, like, I just had to do this.
I feel like
did you feel that way?
I feel like this is a representation of maturity, is really what this is about. That we all want an answer.
Yeah.
We all want to know. Can you please just give me the answer?
Yeah. No, you're right.
But the real world is not like that.
You're right.
And it's not that simple. And so we struggle.
Yeah.
And struggle and the journey, that's got to be the excitement.
Yeah.
That's got to be the challenge. And you have to get your satisfaction from the places where things go your way.
Yeah.
Sometimes things go your way and you're lucky, and sometimes things go your way and you're, it's not that simple.
No, you're so right. I think that is it. And I think in business, we're a little addicted to being right, to having the answer, and we expect people to have the answer. In a time of disruptive change and this adaptation that's required, how can you ever really know the answer? Another question I always liked is, what's your hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
It's only my hypothesis until I get more data and I prove it or not, and I move to the next step. And I used to have business leaders say, I'll only do this if you guarantee me it's $100 million. Well, no.
Right.
I can't do that.
Right.
I can guarantee you we'll get smart about it, and I can guarantee you we'll feel more confident about it, but think of all the crazy business plans people put together, the just certainty that the market is going to go our way. I mean, it's really kind of magical thinking.
And we want the answer to apply to every business.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to recognizing that what works for your business in this situation, this works for Nike. Oh, I should do it.
Right.
Well,
that's such a good
maybe
point.
it's good for Nike. It doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you, or it might be good for Nike at that moment.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's what I tried to do with the book, was share more the personal story of, one, just hopefully maturity, and two, like, the one thing I know for sure for all of us is we can change ourselves. We can't always change the company we work for. We can't change the world on our own, but you can certainly change yourself. And so, I could give you a checklist of things that were absolutely the right thing that we did, but you got to figure out how to adapt that to yourself, right? And I think that is that we all want the easy button.
I have to say about your book, like, you have had an amazing career. You have done unbelievable things. And in the context of telling this book, you could have just told those stories.
Yeah.
And you could have, pushed away the story about how maybe Quirky didn't go exactly the way you wanted.
Yeah,
Maybe iVillage didn't go exactly the way you wanted.
Yeah.
But you open up about those as much or even more than some of the things that were successful. And that I just think that's important for people to know. Failure seems like it's a negative, and it's just a part of life.
Yeah, but look at how we've almost fetishized failure in business. I mean, how many articles did you guys probably do? We all like fail fast, fail small, right? We're here at WeWork. It's kind of the entrepreneur's credo. Like, if I fail more, I'll get funded more or whatever. But no one likes to fail.
No
one likes to fail. But
it's
if you
hard
can't fail, then how can you ever succeed?
Yeah.
And yet we think that we just don't want to tolerate that. It's frustrating.
I mean, listen, you fail when you try things that are ambitious and risky.
Yeah.
And if that's why you fail, that's okay.
Yeah.
I never wanted to fail if it was something that I was like trying to be safe about. Those are the things that are really most painful.
Yeah, I love the way you said that, right. When you're trying to be safe about it, you're like,
it's like, oh.
I took the safe path and it still didn't work.
And I did have an earlier job where I tried to play it safe to keep a certain job because I was under a certain amount of pressure. And I learned from that you know what, I want to do what I'm going to be proud of.
Yeah, how did you learn that? Give a little bit more on that. What happened?
I lost the job anyway.
So you were like, I'm good. If I hold on so tight, I won't lose it.
I won't lose. I'll give them enough of what they want.
Yeah.
And then I looked back at the work that I did during the latter part of that job, and I just wasn't as proud of it.
Yeah.
And I realized that why not use every opportunity you have to create work that you're proud of, that you believe in, and if that doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But rather than sort of look back and say, I didn't really give this all that I had.
Yeah, and that's I think that really is putting yourself in that situation, giving yourself permission to take a risk. Sometimes companies throw too much money at things, they put the wrong people.
Yes.
I mean, those are probably stupid risks, right? But you can do these things in a thoughtful way. It's not no risk or just the riskiest thing possible.
Listen, sometimes having a lot of resources is the worst thing
right,
for
exactly,
a business, right?
Exactly.
And being forced, again, to be simple and to make decisions about, okay, what is really our priority? That's what limited resources forces you to do.
So as you think about all that you covered in your days of covering innovation, editing Fast Company, you've worked with a lot of companies, you're now out consulting and talking to companies. What advice how would you distill it into, what advice do you have to people who, encourage them to get out and take some risk and make some change happen?
Well, listen, I do believe that passion is super important, whether it's for you individually or for a business. You have to believe in what you're doing. And I think that in this time of rapid change, the idea of having a purpose or a mission for you personally or for your business is the ultimate competitive advantage. It allows you to sort of filter what's most important for me to react to, what are the things I'm going to spend my time on, what are the things that I'm most proud of, and spending time to really distill what's most important to you is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It can be lonely sometimes. Some people prefer to do it with groups. Some people, but it's also something that I think never ends.
Yeah. To me, I distill it down, and what I try to do in the book is, it's this giving yourself permission, just kind of kicking yourself in the butt a bit to say, get in there. Really, what's holding you back? Like, be honest about it.
Fear.
It's fear. It's all fear, and that's why people act so weird at work, and why it's hard to make change happen. Like, really, is it that you don't have budget, or you're afraid of doing it? Is your boss really willing not let you, or are you just afraid to find a different way forward? I think this idea of just getting out in the world and discovering and making yourself open to things that are weird, that might contradict your point of view, and then this just experimentation, constantly trying to test things, figure out. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's not simple.
Were there points at GE where you said, because you were there a long time, in lots of different roles, where you said, this is not the right place for me?
Yes, and there were. Why I think I stayed at GE so long is because it was a big platform. It was in so many things and so many parts of the world, that just when I started to feel like this wasn't, or I'm done with this, I don't know what my next challenge is, there was something I could see to be part of. So I think partly it was the company had that, but partly it was me, because I was like, I knew that feeling in myself okay, I feel limited in this, so I've got to craft something new, or I've got to try to put something together. So I'm a big believer in trying to craft those things. But sure, there were times just also where I felt like I wasn't doing as well. I mean, I document the NBC time.
Yeah.
I really struggled in that job.
I mean, I think it can be really hard for people to look at what they have now and say, I don't really like it, but I don't know what else is out there.
Yeah.
So they sort of hold on instead of believing in themselves that they can move to the next place. Obviously, it doesn't mean you have to walk out the door and you know, throw your coat over your shoulder and go into the cold by yourself, but to start thinking about a different future for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's really a great advice, because I think sometimes maybe I had fear of leaving because I didn't have the confidence in myself. Can I do this on my own? You wait for somebody else to validate it with a job offer somewhere else. But I've also learned in this past year on my own just how lonely it is, and I miss my team, and you know, and you have other teams that you get to be part of. I don't know if you've struggled with that, but it's an entrepreneurial path is lonely.
It is very challenging. It's very personally challenging. It's something that I wanted to challenge.
Yeah.
So, you know, we make these choices at certain times, and then you're in it and you're like, ooh, this is hard. You know, but there are a lot of things in life that are hard, and I think that's the way we grow, that's the way we build resilience. You know, I have people ask me like, well, what are you going to be doing X time from now? And I don't know. You know, and it's the same questions people used to ask me when I ran the magazine. Well, what are you writing about, you know, in the next 6 months, the next year? And I was honest, I would try not to plan. That sometimes that planning gets in the way of identifying the opportunities for what's
and
next.
that's really hard. Oh, I'm just such a planner. Oh my gosh.
So am I.
I plan everything.
It is my impulse.
For the first few months after I left GE, I was just doing a to-do list, and I had nothing to do. So it was like, why am I doing this? But when I was starting off on this new chapter, people, first of all, they go like, how do I introduce you? You don't have a title. I still have a name, okay? Like, but then people would say like, what are you going to do? And I'd be like, I don't know. No, you know, you just don't want to tell me. Like, no, I really don't know. And I'm okay with it, you know, but people seemed a bit uncomfortable with me saying even that I'm okay with it.
One of the things that you do talk about in the book is about how important storytelling is. And I'm struggling with this with myself, about what is the story I'm telling about myself.
What is your story?
Because the story I'm telling to myself is, I'm not choosing. You know, I'm waiting for the world to unfold. There is something else, and I'm not sure what it is, and I'm okay with that. But it's a difficult story to tell people who don't appreciate that ambiguity.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you say to people when you know, you're okay with it? Do you need to say anything to anybody?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. You know, listen, I believe that there is potential for another big wave of progress ahead of us. And I want to participate and encourage and catalog that, and how that manifests itself. You know, when I started at Fast Company, what did we do? We put out a monthly print magazine, and that was a full-time job, you know, and by the time I left, it was, you know, a print magazine and, you know, a couple hundred digital stories a week and podcasts and events and, you know, all kinds of things that you do that are video, all things that are different. And so what, you know, what's going to be 5 years from now? You know, these are things that you can look at, but predicting, and you know,
no, you can't see the future. I mean, I called the book Imagine It Forward, not to say you can predict the future, but to keep pushing yourself to think about these kind of possible scenarios that could unfold.
And what future do you want it to be? That's what the imagine part of it is so beautiful about.
It is. What do you want it? What do you want it to be? It's interesting you talk about story. I when you want to freak people out, I like to say, "What's your story?" Like, what is that? You know, I don't do that very often, but every now and then, "What's your story?" But I've had to recraft my story. I mean, in some ways, I've had to go back to who I am. I mean, I found these. This essay I did when I was 14, like my autobiography at 14, and one of the little nuggets from it I loved was I wrote, I'm ambitious and I want to do 50 different things. And I was that at 14, and I'm still that now at not 14. And so it's sometimes good to go back to where you were to help you remember and to also push you forward. There's that essence you're talking about. What's that essence of you? And at the end of the day, I'm like, my story is I'm a learner. I'm a beginner. I want to take the wisdom I have and the experience, and I want to start over again somewhere. So I'm going to re-enter business in a very different way. And my story's unfolding. I kind of like that. It's sort of fun.
Well, there's something you said just a few minutes ago about how when you say you're not sure what you're going to do next, that people say, oh yeah, you know. And I also think, though, that's a reflection of maybe you not seeing yourself as clearly or in some ways that other people see you. And you may not appreciate all that you are already bringing, you know, that you have created, that you demonstrate, that you have command over, that other people will find very valuable. I have no doubt about
well,
that.
so you and I have had similar journeys this past year. Any tips you'd offer to people for now that you're in this kind of entrepreneurial, ambiguous world of not knowing yet? You're between multiple worlds. What advice do you have to people to get your head around that?
In some ways, to keep my head around it, I try to appreciate that, like, even though I was associated with a different kind of business or label earlier, it was just as ambiguous. And you know, actually nothing really has changed on that level.
That's a good way
it was
to put
just sort of the illusion again of you know, structure around what we were doing, but really every day we were coming in and making it up as we went along, the same way we've always done from the day we were born, right? And this is
That's
what
great
life
advice.
is.
I've been out trying to discover, try different things, push myself now that I, in theory, have more time. You know, I've done like an improv class. I've done some classes on philosophy. I've done just different things to put myself in a new realm of discovery, to kind of open my mind in new ways, just to start to say, what if? You know, reading more fiction, trying to go and explore weird themes and topics. That's been my curiosity, has always been my way to kind of navigate the what's next and what's new. So look, thanks for the chat. I thought it would be fun. Just one, you and I have known each other a while. We've been on similar journeys. We're now sort of charting out. A funny thing, when I was early thinking about doing a book, I sought your advice, and I was like,
and my advice
Bob,
was,
I was like, Bob, I'm thinking of writing a book. What do you think? And you
and I said, don't do it.
It's a terrible idea.
It's too hard.
It's a terrible idea.
And now that you've done it,
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. You
Yeah.
have to really be compelled, and clearly in reading this you were, but that's the way I think about books. You have to be excited enough about doing them that even if no one reads it, you can't help but put it together yourself.
My husband
That's
said,
what the
you
best
know
books
you were
do.
always going to do this book. And I don't know that he knew that about me. I mean, he knew that about me, and I didn't know that about me necessarily, but I know what he meant in that I think I always wanted to reflect on what the journey I had been and be able to share some learnings and hopefully help other folks. Especially, I'm really trying to say to people mid-career, mid-part of whatever their organization, big or small, like, you can make change happen. It starts with you. You have to fight for the future. You can't abdicate that.
And they are the future.
They are the future.
That is the reality. The world that they are going into is going to be way different than the world that you and I, you know, grew up in business. And how that world unfolds is going to be a reflection of the things that they imagine.
Exactly, and it's not all just the people at the top. I mean, perhaps we put too much emphasis on the people who lead the organizations as opposed to the individual team leaders, the managers. I actually think manager is a weird title when I think about it. We don't manage anything, let's be honest. We can build a vision, we can help people lead, we can coach, we can find the resources, but these are the people who are going to drive change in the world, in our organizations. And so I just really wanted to encourage them and say, we need you. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for the book.
Thanks for the chance to have my own book club. So anyway, thanks, Bob. Thanks a lot. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.